Oh, hello and welcome once again. Hey, 76NY here. Welcome to episode number 7 of our douchebag playthrough on Suzerain, Rumburg Games creation, where you play as the president of Sordland. I've decided to play President Anton Rayne as a complete dick whenever the opportunity presents itself and see how that affects the story. So far, going okay, I guess. Screwed over Walter Tusk and his business buddies by taking a bribe and then choosing someone else. I'm sure that'll come back to bite me in the ass, but I don't really care. It's all about my personal power and my personal wealth. Although I guess you could say that giving stimulus checks to the people instead of bailing out big business is kind of counter to what the asshole in Rayne do. I looked at it more as in reality, I could now say, I decided to help you out, the citizens of Sordland. And with that in mind, buying votes, I am not above. So now we have to talk to our mentor. I probably shouldn't be doing spoilers like that, but Wisci. This guy, Deivid Wisci. He's the Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is kind of the Secretary of State. If you're from America, it's similar to that. So we'll take a look and see what our foreign policy is going to be and decide that. The door opened and Deivid Wisci, once a lecturer to me, now Minister of Foreign Affairs, gently made his way towards my desk. May I sit down, Mr. President? Gesture at the chair. Good to see you. He slowly sat down, taking care not to aggravate the arthritis in his knees. He'd always had an air of gravitas about him. In old age, it only served to deepen that. After he settled himself, he regarded me with delight, blue eyes sparkling. Look at you, Anton, the 4th president of Sordland. What a privilege for me. I still remember the first day you took my class at the Whelend State University. Somehow the inexplicable ebb and flow of life has led us here, to positions where we can change the course of history. Everything happens for a reason, David. It was meant to be. We got a little lucky. This is our opportunity to shape the future, and we will do precisely that. Everything happens for a reason. Maybe, maybe not. I don't believe in destiny, but sometimes it feels convenient to do so. He started coughing. Time it was longer. Let's start talking about foreign policy. Stop coughing, old man. The door opened and Iosef and Lucian joined us for the briefing as the tall case clock hit the hour mark. Peter, however, was missing. Wondered if he was late from all the drinking he did at the party in Lockhaven. Well, talk more later, President Rayne. Welcome, everyone. Let's begin. Very well. I'll start by providing a brief overview of our current status with our neighbors. What would you like to start with? Let's just go down the list. Agnolia. Our brotherly neighbor to the northeast, Agnolia. They're still diplomatically non-aligned and probably has one of the most democratic systems between our neighbors. Economic stagnation is a worry for them. Primary issue is their heavy reliance on foreign investment from us. Agnolia is our most friendly neighbor. We've been allies for the longest time after Rumburg annexed Dome. This fact needs to be a part of the equation. So Agnolia, good. Unsurprisingly, the Agnolian Prime Minister Martin van Horten is expecting better cooperation through a new fairer trade deal with us. It was one of his election mandates. We'll think about his request. The matter is still on the table. More comprehensive trade deal sounds beneficial to all sides. We should maintain the existing agreement. We can't lose our advantage. I will consider his request, I guess. We could secure them as allies if we make concessions in a new agreement. Rumburg is our common threat. Additionally, the latest numbers indicate that currently 1 million Agno-Sordish citizens live in Agland region of Sordland, which creates a link between foreign policy and our internal affairs. People have suffered socioeconomically, which led them to crime and other problems. In addition, a relaxed immigration policy was one of Agnolia's main requests, which is unacceptable. I agree. Most of the migrants in our country haven't even assimilated into Sordish culture. Adding more won't help. I'm skeptical about relaxed immigrations, or I'm supportive. I'm not. You should be. We have already witnessed several society shifting waves of immigration. Okay, got it. Not what you said. We should remember that we promised to tighten our immigration laws in the election campaign. About Valgsland. Our cousins of old across the Markian Sea wish to have good relations with. As we all know, Valgsland is a socialist republic aligned with United Cantana. We're a very important regional player, so Valgsland is united with United Cantana. Whoops. It's also the most significant sea power in eastern Marcopa. We had hostile relations with them after several wars in the 19th century, which we wouldn't want to experience again. Recently, the relationships have warmed up thanks to Emeric Hagel. As a result, diplomatic talks can be conducted in the future. It's not easy to forget about the Great Fire of Conrad. Thousands of lives were lost that. Breaking the ice with Valgsland could be good. We are to rise diplomatically. We shouldn't take any sides between regional powers. I did make a note to remind myself that Valgsland is good. Go with that. And we do want to rise. I agree they could be potential allies, in my opinion. The situation in the region necessitates that we find allies. They haven't been in good relations with us for the past 200 years. Recently, they have also joined the Communist Cantana Security Pact, subjecting themselves to United Cantana. On top of that, territorial issues flare up between Agnolia and Valgsland because of the Helgeland Island. Sordish Navy is very concerned with this volatile situation. Lucian looks slightly worried. Unfortunately, billions of Sordish Wren worth of cargo is transported close to Valgslandian maritime borders on the Markian Sea and the Grey Strait. This causes significant risk to our imports and exports in the case of a deteriorating relation. Deterioration in relation. Hog's got me flustered here. Trade is of high strategic value. Iosef, the Navy is keeping an eye on the situation from a distance, right? We are actively monitoring the sea routes and cargo ships. For now, there is no immediate threat, but we do not know what can happen in the future. What about Whelend? It is tumultuous in the south, as always. Victor Smolak is expanding his powers among protests from Wezek people. However, he is quite positive about the normalization of relations between our countries. Reports indicate that they have been warming up to Cantanan aid. As you know, Whelend's stability is always a concern for the region. But if we want to help them, we must not treat refugees like we did in the 30s. I still can't stomach the inhumanity of those people suffered. Well, I kind of turned them back to fate, so not really. A trade agreement with them would improve stability and increase mutual trade. Why help such a disorganized state? Not sure what we can do to help them. Sordland paid enough by housing millions of refugees during the Whelend. It does pose many risks, but we can ensure that we have more influence in the region by increasing our trade and border security. Our main goal should be to avoid a refugee crisis like the late 20s. Civil War had major security and economic repercussions on soil. One of the demands of President Smolak was to tighten our immigration laws so the political refugees don't escape to Sordland. There's been a recent purge that pushed many Blutish to flee to Bergia. Definitely troubling. Government outpost has regained its importance due to this. I'm sure you would remember that winter at the border outpost, Mr. President. He was right. I did remember that winter. Remember the despair in the refugees' eyes when we forcibly escorted them back to the border. It is in our national interest to prevent the formation of a failed state on our western border. Whelend has been increasingly allying itself towards the Communist Alliance, another point to analyze. So I may come into future conflict with my Minister of Defense, because you remember back at the beginning, we're going to kind of buddy up with the commies. Two important neighboring countries remain, Lesbia and Rumburg. Which would you like to hear about first? Rumburg. Now to the most troublesome nation, Rumburg. Constitutional monarchy led by Queen Beatrice Livingston. I highly advise caution and calculated action against Rumburg. Our military must be prepared. The threat is real. They are strong and have the motivation, as well as the means, to damage us. Shouldn't give them any reason to pursue aggression. I will take your advice into consideration. We must prevent them from interfering in our affairs, or Rumburg is always and has always been a, quote, rogue state. Nothing can be done about them. Let's prevent them from interfering, I guess. They've shown similar behavior to their neighboring countries before, but we must be cautious. While Thornborough openly denies such claims, their past and current actions make it clear that they want to destabilize. Weapons caches found by our intelligence agency clearly shows what their goal is. Military must be steadfast and our diplomacy valiant. Iosef looked stern and full of resolve, as he always does. Rumburg threat is one of our top priorities. We are always in dialogue with our Rumburg ambassador to make sure a channel is open to solve disputes. They close their consulates. We could use their aggressive attitude against them by convincing the international community. Lucian grabbed the Lockhaven Times newspaper and put his finger on the article about the latest diplomatic incident. Their abrupt announcement about the closure of the Rumburg consulate in Lockhaven is yet another step in their escalation. What about Lesbia? Our southern neighbor is allying itself more and more with Arcasia. Lesbia is currently led by Prime Minister Patricio Alvarez. Lesbia is a republic. They are the jewel of the continent and the second largest economy in Mercopa. The wealthy Lesbia suffers from excessive economic inequality. Our past relations have been great, but during the last decade, their investment to Sordland dwindled due to our instability. Lying with the richest regional nation could be beneficial. It could be, but it would also mean that we would draw closer to the Arcasian bloc and near the Arcasian Treaty Organization. Kind of like EU, I guess. Capitalist. I'm certain that the recession has a lot to do with their retraction of investment. Once they see that money isn't in the picture, they vanish rather quickly because they are capitalists. They have shown a selfish attitude during the Whelend Civil War by closing their borders and funneling refugees to cross into Sordland. Okay, I think we kind of did the same thing, but whatever. Our values are too different with Lesbia. Well, hard to see eye to eye. I'm gonna go with that one. I completely agree. Lesbia has for a long time benefited from us through our old tariffs. They are after exploitation. There are hundreds of very privileged oligarchs who invest inside and outside of Lesbia. Some made significant business investments in cities of Benfi and Valgsland. This covers the overview of the current situation. We will move on to our trade choice and the response to Rumburg's escalation. The sun began to set over the hills surrounding Lockhaven. The team was ready to give advice on the new trade initiative and the response to the latest diplomatic incident in Rumburg. Peter arrived late and a little rougher than usual. It must have been the drinking from last night. Hey there, folks. Excuse my delay. I'm sure I didn't miss anything we didn't already know. We're still supposed to be part of the meeting, also on time. Punctuality is important. We're talking about serious subjects here. Peter was assigned a task for me. That's why he's late, so let's move on so I can cover for him. They have a point, Peter. Should have discipline in the cabinet. Excuse me, it won't happen again. Lucian and Joseph looked at Peter before Deivid moved away from the subject. Vice President will be part of the trade delegation, so it is great to have input on the subject, but also on the Rumburg incident. There are two issues at hand. Which topic should we tackle first? Let's go to the trade. Our primary goal will be to successfully sign a trade agreement with one of our smaller neighbors. We have two options with our trade initiative. Start a new negotiation with our old partner Agnolia, or form a new cooperation with Whelend. Well, Valgsland isn't even an option, so... Alright, well, we'll keep Valgsland in mind going forward. Whelend, I'm leaning against Whelend just because... Okay, well, we'll learn about all of them. Tell me about the trade deal with Agnolia. First off, the reason behind this option is more diplomatic than economic, although, of course, we can't forego the added economic value. Agnolia is an old ally and a valuable trade partner. The point we're at with the early negotiations is around the steel trade. They're demanding that we buy their steel for a higher price. That is because they think that the deal is far too unbalanced as it. Their second main demand is a privileged access to our agricultural market. We are to fulfill their demands. In return, they are offering full alliance with Sordland against Rumburg. That's a good thing. Looking at the current advances of Rumburg near our border, having a coalition against Rumburg would prove extremely useful. Obviously, there will be consequences for entering a full alliance. Mainly, the issue is around the Helgi Islands. Valgsland has clear intentions on taking over the islands, one way or another, and entering a military alliance with Agnolia would make them furious. Pickle. I want to state my support for the decision to stick to our old ally, Agnolia. Even though I disagree with their demands to relax immigration, we have cooperated with them on many issues in the past. There are obviously subjects that we would still need to tackle, like our economies, the trade goods, and what to do with immigration. My opinion is that this is a good deal and we should go for it. The new Agnolian Prime Minister is trying to improve the existing relations. The downside is that we would need to make a concession. Reality of any trade. I don't want to give any concessions to them, or we can't position ourselves against Valgsland. Give any concessions to them. Might be unsatisfactory in the short run, however, it would have real impact on the long run. You decide that Agnolia is a good option. Another point is that they have a very democratic system. After the recent elections, the PM has a mandate to arrange a fairer deal with us. Martin Van Horten also is an avid supporter of relaxed immigration, which we are not. Since we said we will tighten immigration, he might be reluctant. Regardless, if we're going to increase our regional influence to previous levels, we might need to make amends with our neighbors. Ultimately, the decision will be up to you. Tell me about Whelend. Dealing with a fractured country like Whelend has its positives and negatives. Although it will be lucrative in short term, there are risks associated with dealing with such a country. They are proposing co-investment projects and a no-tariff agreement. They are also offering oil in return for attaching foreign capital interests from Sordland. However, it is possible that there will be an international ramifications of getting closer to a country like Whelend. All in all, it's a very lucrative deal for us. However, we need to think about the consequence. I certainly don't support the decision to become friendlier with Whelend. We carried their burden for decades. Their migrants flooded our country, and now they are expecting a deal from us. Maintaining influence with Whelend could prove useful. Yes, it is risky, but think about our influences on the underdeveloped region like that. We could also sell more product, enter their market easily. I'm of the opinion that it is simply too risky. Yes, we would gain resources and immediate capital, but I'm afraid of the consequence. Well, shit. So Agnolia is going to want us to relax our immigration policy. I don't want to. Might be beneficial in the short term, like they said, to go with Whelend, but I think in the long term it probably wouldn't be a very good idea. But we don't have to do what Agnolia wants us to. And all of my advisors are kind of against it, except for Peter, but he's kind of a bonehead, so too risky. And to agree. Wish to go forward with the deal when the time comes. There is a topic of immigration. Victor Smolak is a known isolationist. Our promise to tighten our immigration policy will increase the likelihood of the deal. He believes our borders need better security. Personally, don't like the idea of getting too close to Whelend. Me too. Agreed. I still think we should give it a try. Our campaign promise to steer Sordland towards east and United Katana will have an effect on the negotiations, especially with Whelend. As you know, the current affairs of Whelend are partly a result of United Katana's support for Victor Smolak. Our promise will come in handy. He's the president yet. As for Agnolia, this promise had made them cautious, which might make it harder to get a good deal. We also need to consider the effects of our economic doctrine. The fact that we are headed towards a planned economy will have an influence. Good negotiators optimize the interests which make the difference become trivial, allowing both sides to reach a deal. You're not a good negotiator. Very true, Mr. Vector. We have a lot of time to prepare before the scheduled visits to Whelend and Agnolia. I believe this gives a brief overview of our current options. Let's talk about the diplomatic incident. Rumburg consul Sir Bran Harrington announced the closure of the 120-year-old consulate. Now their diplomatic staff is leaving the city to go back through to Thornburg. He blamed the lack of security in Sordland due to the assassination and the subsequent protests. It is obvious they are making excuses. Bastards! First they close their consulate, and then they blame our security. Their concerns could be genuine, but this reaction is unnecessary. Security situation is under control. They're playing with us. Isn't it telling when other countries are working with us while Rumburg is just cutting more ties with us? The Neglect of President Alfonso and the chaos of the elections delayed our diplomatic effort. Now there are only 2 Rumburg diplomatic missions left in Sordland. One is the consulate in Dyer, and the other is the embassy in Holsword. We are accustomed to the usual rhetoric, but this is far more serious. I must display strength to my people. We can't be pushed around. They're bluffing. We're used to it, but I must be strong and resolute. All of this may be a calculated plan of action to push us to a corner and act irrationally. This is my fear. Might be looking for a casus belli and are slowly spiraling downward to find reasons to wage war. Joseph Lancia is furious. He barely kept himself from slamming the desk. There are worrying developments like the smuggled arms and the buildup near the border. Our military must be buffed up to stand against a regional power like Rumburg. We either respond to this aggressive act with a diplomatic condemnation, or we retaliate by closing our consulate in Dome. I want to say that an escalation would be risky this early in our presidency. We should focus on creating a negative image of Rumburg in the international scene. People of Sordland must be protected, no matter the cost. I say we respond equally. Retaliate by closing the Sordland consulate in Dome. They think they can bully us. They were never so wrong. Or write an official diplomatic response condemning this unreasonable act. We're going to retaliate by closing our embassy in Dome. As you wish, Mr. President, I shall begin work by immediately informing the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Strong response to Rumburg will boost popularity at home. I'm glad that we're drawing a clearer red line. Otherwise, they will keep escalating the situation. Like the determination, Mr. President. Our trade delegation will begin work towards the end of the year. We expect a final negotiation and the signing to happen next year. I'm very much looking forward to visiting Stallport and Rocklaws. Party animals like Deivid and Simon. Ha ha ha. Well, Joseph narrowed his eyes and stared at him. Grr. Well, that concludes our meeting, Mr. Rayne. See you later. I'll take my leave then. Sure. The meeting concluded and the team dispersed. Our diplomatic action plan officially began. Here we go. Have a firm foreign policy now. See what this is. Young Sword members claim link to the government. The detained Young Swords members in Arbury claim that he has connection to the government. We have been investigating the truth of his claim, but we're not able to find any leads. Okay. What do we have to do here? Briefing on the results from the Reform Committee. Alrighty. Troubling news are coming from the mayor of Enrica, who reported that a state of chaos exists in the city and called an emergency directive authorizing him to use security power. In an announcement, Mayor Lesty said, "We are supporting 20 police officers heavily wounded, 2 police stations burned down and several shot. The city is in a state of emergency and we're trying to restore order." Local gendarmerie began assisting the mayor after the emergency request was made. Armed units are now securing critical junctions and key infrastructure like power stations and hospital and municipality building. Local NFP leaders have announced that they will assist the local enforcement with the task of keeping the streets safe by reporting violent dissenters. Statement criticized by the local PFJ. Welfare issues at Narble. 2 of them read. Narble, a city that was once an important trade stop for the Marquian Empire, has been in steep decline for the past decade. We have uncovered hard from the residents themselves. AA shepherd living near the Cavendier Mountains that did not wish to disclose his real name made a shocking remarks about the city and region's lack of healthcare service. He waited almost 5 months just to get an appointment in a rural region. Another resident farmer, IY, also didn't have anything to do with the press. The unrest in the streets is continuing, and the tension between different groups has led to new clashes with hundreds of wounded and sometimes several dead a week. Every third person on our team. Protests are ramping up. We need democracy. We have long demanded the expansion of civil rights with reforms to modernize our nation. The previous government blamed the Supreme Court for not allowing the reforms. The opposition was quick to point out flaws within the Constitution and brought focus on reforming the government structure to open way for further civil reforms. Now the reformists have increased in number, and with a president who is seen as a symbol of change in office, we are waiting for results. Whether it is the leader of the opposition or our current president, someone has to break the cycle and rewrite the Constitution made by Tarkin Soul. The cult of personality has shaped our current divided national spirit and must be broken. Sordland closes consulate. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade reacted swiftly to the Rumburg consulate closure in Lockhaven by shutting down the Sordland consulate in Dome, Agnolian city annexed by Rumburg. Clear retaliatory diplomatic response will draw a lot of attention in the global diplomatic stage, but was welcomed by PM Martin Van Horten. President Rayne seems to be decisive against Rumburg, but whether it will be worth it is another question. Anything else? All right, so our foreign policy is set, taking a hard line on Rumburg and leaning towards Agnolia as far as trade goes. The only problem with Agnolia is this is the island that these guys are fighting over. Both claim it. If we align with them and piss them off, they're kind of strong. We kind of want them as an ally for this beast up here. But we can't have everything. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, if you liked the episode, hit the like button. If you have any tips or advice, leave those in the comment section down below. If you want to see how long Anton Rayne lasts as president of Sordland, hit the subscribe and come with us, and we will see you for the next episode, where we will get into the briefing about the reforms. Fun times. J76NY saying thank you very much for watching, and have yourself a very good day.